In this short video, we're going to give you a brief introduction into a software called Autostakkert. So in order to get started, all you need to do is you need to download a free copy of Autostakkert from their website, and you need to acquire a video of the moon or the planets using DSLR or a planetary camera attached to your telescope. The length of the video is completely up to yourself. For this tutorial here, we just used a 30-second video clip, so it's quite short. We generally wouldn't recommend any more than 2 minutes for the larger planets because you have to take their rotation into account as well. But for the moon, 2 minutes, even 3 minutes is fine. And obviously the longer your video clip, the more frames you're going to have. Okay, so let's get started. So when you open up Autostakkert, you're going to be presented with these two screens here. The screen on the left hand side is your image preview screen, and when we open up our video, this is where we're going to get a preview of it. It's a handy screen because you can look at individual frames, which we'll show you later on, and you can play back the video and just kind of get an idea what the quality is like before you stack it. Okay, and then the box on the right hand side, this is where we control our stacking options. A lot of the settings you're going to see on this, we'll go through what each setting actually does, but regarding which one to select, the default setting actually does a really good job, so we wouldn't recommend changing too much. There's one or two settings we will change, but we'll explain why as we go through the video. So if we go ahead now and we'll open up a video file. So before we actually go ahead and stack the frames from this video, I'm just going to briefly go through why we actually stack a video file as opposed to taking an individual photograph using a camera or a mobile phone. Basically, if I play this video here, this is a live feed of the video that we captured the other night, and you can see every so often it'll get sharp and it'll go blurry, almost like a heat haze, and that's caused by the jet stream in the atmosphere. It's thermal activity, moisture in the air, all these kind of things affect how clear the actual image that we're going to see is. And the more you magnify the image, so that the more you zoom in, the worse this is going to appear. Which is why when you look at the moon from the ground on a crystal clear night, it looks sharp as anything, but when you zoom in you see this kind of effect, this ripple effect in the video itself. So what Autostakkert actually does is, if I go back here to the very first frame, you'll see I can actually move it across frame by frame. And what you'll notice is every so often you'll get a really sharp frame and then it'll go blurry again, and then you might get a couple of frames later you might get a really sharp one. And what Autostakkert does is it'll analyze the whole video, and in this particular video we have 445 frames. So Autostakkert will look at every single frame in the video and it'll grade them based on their quality, and it'll allow us then to just stack the frames that have the highest quality. So basically what you're doing is, rather than just getting one particular image, you could end up with, you know, thousands of photographs all stacked together, which is going to give you a real clean, detailed final image of the object that you're viewing. So when you open up your video file in the preview window here, you'll notice that there's this green stabilization box. And what that's for is Autostakkert will use any surface features inside this box as a reference point, and it'll go through each frame and it'll make sure that all those features are aligned and centered on each frame. So if you look at this particular example here, we have the Plato crater and we have a lot of contrast and detail there, so it's probably a good place to leave the stabilization box. But if you press Control and left mouse button, you can actually move it around to focus on different surface features. So for example, if you were to leave it here, you haven't got a huge amount of detail for it to reference. So ideally you're looking for somewhere that has a lot of contrast, a lot of sharpness. As I said, this ridge area here is a pretty good spot for us to use, so we'll leave that one there. So if we go back over here to the right hand box, we'll see a number of options here. So because we're actually looking at a surface feature on the moon, we have it selected the surface here. If we were, for example, viewing a planet, you'd have the planetary disk in the middle and you'd probably have a lot of black space around the outside of it. Obviously there's no features in that black area around the planet, so what you do is you pick a planet center of gravity, and what Autostakkert will do is it'll use the outline edge of the planet as a reference point, and it'll make sure that each frame is aligned to keep that planet center, the stack itself. So, but in this case, no, we're going to leave this on surface. So you'll also see here we have this quality estimator, Now, like a lot of this software, the default setting is the best place to leave it. In this particular case, when you start it up, default is set to 6. If you have a particularly noisy image, scene conditions were bad, you can increase this up as far as 8, but generally 6, the default, is usually the best place to leave it. You have various different methods of alignment. So you have local alignment points and then you have global alignment points. 99% of the time, local alignment points is going to be the better option to use. There are some situations where global alignment will actually give you a better result, but again, local is a default. We suggest leaving it at this. So now we're ready to analyze the video. So if I select Analyze, normally this process takes a long time, but because we used a very short recording, it's actually fairly quick. So when the Analyze step is finished, you'll see we have this quality graph here, and you'll see this 50% mark here, this line here. Anything above 50% is considered good data. Anything below 50% is considered bad data. So this is not a great video. You can see the majority of it is actually below 50%. Importantly, you'll see this green median line here, and that's like an average of the whole video. And what we'll generally do is we have a choice. We can stack either a specific number of frames. So we have 445 frames in this video. So I could say, okay, right, I want to stack 100 of the best frames, and that's fine. But generally what we would do is we would use this graph here, and where the mean line or the average line intersects the 50%, that's the point that we normally use in order to select the frames. So if you press Control and left click, you can move this mark along the line. And as I move the mark along the line, you'll notice that this percentage box here changes. So where this intersects the 50% line, it's telling me 24% of the frames. So that's this 24% here. These are the best 24% of the whole video. If I go, for example, here, you'll see we've the best 49%. And so on, and here best 75. Generally, as I said, you want to be down here where the intersection is. If you want to compare different stacks, you can decide, well look, I want to try the best 15% and I also want to try the best 10%. Whoops, sorry, 10% and the best 5%. That's actually going to carry out 4 different stacks, and it'll allow you then to compare which one is the best. Okay, so once we have all our frames selected, we can decide then what format we want the final images saved in. The default setting is TIFF, and generally that's the recommended setting to keep it in, especially if you're going to be doing any post editing in Photoshop, if you plan on increasing the sharpness or just making adjustments to the saturation and so on. If you're happy with the final image and you don't plan on doing any more editing, you can save it as a PNG. And then some post-processing software require it to be saved as a FIT file. 3 boxes here, we generally leave all 3 of these ticked, but the sharpened in particular, if you have that ticked, what happens is when you complete the stacked image, you're going to have 2 image files. One is going to be the raw stacked file, and the other one is going to be a slightly sharpened version of it. Now you can increase this if you want to make it even sharper, but generally we would leave it at 50%, which is the default, because you're going to, as you increase this, you're going to add a lot more noise to the image anyway. And if you are planning on sharpening any further, you're probably going to do it using the TIFF file in Photoshop. So we generally recommend leaving that at 50%. So down here we'll have this box here, and all this is just a prefix. So if we put in, for example, Plato Crater, because that's what this image is, it means that all the image files are going to have Plato Crater as a prefix to them, so we know kind of what they are. And then we have advanced settings down here. So drizzle is something that we can use if you want to upscale the image, make it larger. This particular image was captured using an ASI 224 MC planetary camera, which it has a really small sensor, so the final image is actually quite a small image. We can increase that by 1.5 times by using the drizzle function, or 3 times. Bear in mind that's going to increase the length of time it's going to take to do the stack, and it works best generally if the image is undersampled. So you'll notice here that the stack option is shaded, and the reason being is that on this screen here we have to set our alignment points. So normally what you would do is you'd make sure multi-scale is selected, and I'll explain why in a minute. You have different options here. You can manually select alignment points. So if you left click on the mouse, you'll create an alignment point. If you right click, you'll actually make it disappear, or you can just select clear. At the moment I have the size set to 24. If I set it to say 48, we're going to get slightly bigger ones, 104. And again, it depends. Like for example, the Plato crater itself is quite big, so we would probably use a bigger alignment box here. If you select multi-scale, the alignment point grid, what will happen is the grid will actually create alignment points of various different sizes depending on the feature that it's focused on. So we'll clear that now. Place, I have it selected to multi-scale, so place alignment point grid, and you'll see that all the alignment points now have been placed, and you'll notice that some of them are actually bigger, and even through here you can see there's various different sizes, and that's because I have it selected to multi-scale. So the stack button has now highlighted. So the stacking process itself can take quite a while normally, especially if you're using a high quality video. As I said, this particular video clip we took was very short, but it's going through the process now, and now it's going through the final stack. And once that's finished, then you should see your stacked images in the folders themselves. Okay, so the final stack has finished, and we can go and have a look. So if I open the root directory here, you'll notice that, you remember we had 4 different frame sets, so we had 25%, 15% and 10. You have 25, 15 and 10, so it's basically put them into various folders for us. So if we start here at the lower one at 5%, so if we look here, you'll also notice we put in Plato crater as the prefix, and you have Plato crater here in the file name. Because we selected sharpened, you have 2 images. If you didn't select sharpened, you'd only have this one here, which is the raw stacked image. So if we go to the raw stacked image here, and now we look at the sharpened version, and you can see there's a big difference. So that's a pretty good result, and that's only the best 5% of the frames. So if we close that and we go back here and we have a look at say 25%, again here's the original raw stacked file, and then we can look at the sharpened one, and again it's a much better image. We can either save that as it is, or you can, as I said, it's probably a little bit dark. I would tend to upload this now to Photoshop and just increase the brightness a little bit. But overall, yeah, given the fact that it was a short video and the quality wasn't great, the stacked image came out pretty good. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up this tutorial on Autostakkert. Hope you found it helpful. It's a fantastic piece of software, and there's actually a lot more in it. This was just kind of a brief overview to give you a good running start at it. But definitely, if you're looking to get into photographing the moon and the planets, it's a really good way. But yeah, check it out, and if you have any questions, feel free to let us know.